This guy, an American hero, Colonel Phil Waldron, U.S. Army, retired, an information warfare expert, a systems analyst. He is one of the key witnesses helping out the Donald Trump team, along with Rudy Giuliani. He's been dissecting Dominion, revealing all kinds of basic flaws, how corrupt this system actually is. Phil Waldron, unfortunately, you probably haven't heard much, if anything at all, about this guy because mainstream media are doing their best to ignore this story. But he's out there every day with Rudy and the team making the case before state lawmakers, primarily, hoping that they'll do something before it's too late.
All of those reporting, the fractional voting is there. It's not a whole number. Again, if there are 10 people, you cast 10 ballots. The sum of the whatever candidates are voted for should equal 10 and not, 2.87 for one, 3.13 for the other, and 4 for the third candidate. It should all, equal whole numbers.
Okay, let's be honest. This is not exactly CSI Miami, okay? He is very technical, and it's one of the many reasons why the mainstream media are not embracing him. Number one, this is a complex story. Number two, they have already made up their minds. And this guy is trying to help out a Republican. Compare this colonel with another colonel, a lieutenant colonel, Oliver North. Remember him? That was dramatic. The uniform and the theatrics. It was on Capitol Hill, of course, a hero of mine, by the way. And remember, he was going after, at least the media portrayed it that way. He wasn't personally going after it, but they thought it was all bad for Ronald Reagan. That was about. So he became household name famous. That's not happening right now for Colonel Waldron. It doesn't mean what he's talking about is any less important. In fact, on the merits, it's a lot more important than the Iran-Contra affair. We have the testimony, we have footage like this, the Dominion system, which is very, very complicated and expensive. There are a lot of reasons why places like Texas said, this is not for us. Good Republicans on Capitol Hill are taking notice, and they're calling for action.
For about the last 4 years, we said, you said, this town said that the Russians helped Donald Trump win the election and they hacked it and so on and so forth, with no evidence whatsoever. Now, sitting under a mountain of evidence, no one wants to take a look. Nobody can be bothered. Ladies and gentlemen, this is urgent. We can't wait for a year for Durham or the Attorney General to get to the answer. The American people need to know right now. We have an election in Georgia next month. We need to know right now whether we can trust it. We call on the Attorney General to get in there, do a forensic audit, find the evidence, and let us know if this has been a fair election. Thank you.
Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. And you can tell right there that there's not a lot of energy at these things because the media, they are staying clear. And they're trying to make anybody who's open-minded about this even seem like a nut job, like you're, way out there crazy. What they're saying and doing to Rudy Giuliani is unconscionable. This man is an American hero, one of the greatest prosecutors of the 20th century. And look at him. He is everywhere all at once. The travel, relentless. I did not think he was going to be in Atlanta today. And sure enough, he was there. Before that, Michigan, Phoenix. He is working about 1,000 times harder than Joe Biden ever worked in his life. And boy, looking at Joe, I don't think it's going to happen. If it were to happen, Joe would be the most bizarre, remote figurehead president this country has ever had. I don't believe it's going to happen. Now, in the meantime, big tech, media, they're really trying to keep this story off of Donald Trump and on the incoming Biden administration. The speech that the president made, he released on social media. Good luck finding it. Really not heavily promoted by social. They have ways of downplaying this stuff. And when it made the news, they didn't even give him a chance.
It continues to lie about election fraud. Just today, releasing a 46-minute video repeating fact-free conspiracy theories about the election being stolen.
Just came right out and called it a lie. It's Jonathan Karl from ABC News, the head of the White House Correspondents Association for a while. Has he talked to everybody? Has he interviewed Colonel Waldron? How about all these folks? mainstream media, they've been making fun of them because, oh, they're not the most polished people, some of them. Some of them are working class. Some of them maybe aren't accustomed to the limelight, so they get made fun of. They're already lining up certain cast members on SNL to depict some of these people because they're holding their noses up, laughing at them, and not even giving them a chance. That's awful. You know, there's another dynamic at work here. The mainstream media, they feel guilt because they paid so much attention to Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. They beat themselves up to this day. We shouldn't have carried this rally. We shouldn't have carried that rally. You know, we were only thinking about ratings. We should never have given him as much attention. So in 2019, 2020, really when the campaign started, you'll notice they didn't take those rallies in full. They stayed away from them to hurt him. So it was harder for him to get the message out. That's not fair. That's not right. I want to tell you this story. My wife tells me I tell it too much, but I've only been to one Donald Trump rally, and it was the very first on June 16, 2015. They didn't even call them rallies back then. It was just an event, and we didn't know exactly what would happen. But Donald Trump announced for the presidency. I was somewhat surprised. I thought it was going to be a new TV show. In the aftermath, everybody in the mainstream media said this was a total joke. This is not going to happen. They actually put Donald Trump in clown makeup and put it on the cover of the Daily News. But there was one person there who saw through all of that, who didn't pay attention to the mainstream and just listened to the speech like most Americans did. And I'm still proud of what I said that day.
I think he might be a game changer in this race. Listen to that speech. It's going to go over well in certain precincts in Iowa, New Hampshire. This is a big deal. This is not a joke.
Okay, I know it seems like I'm probably a big mouth on this show and on social media, but one thing I actually do pretty well is listen. And I am a fairly perceptive person, if I may say so. And too many in the media, they're above listening. They just want to talk, and tell you what they think to be or what they hope to be the truth. And I'm not like that, in part because I grew up outside of the media culture. I grew up in the military and didn't go into this stuff until I was in my 30s. Let's talk real quick about big tech and big media and bigger egos. They should take note of something. As they work to stifle and censor the president and those who support him, they are playing with fire. A lot of folks don't realize this, but you may remember the Arab Spring started in Tunisia, then went out throughout the Middle East. These are scenes from Egypt, I believe. And massive throngs came out in support of democracy and against the corrupt regimes. It's been told that social media fueled all of this, promoting democracy. But you know what angered a lot of folks in this crowd and didn't really spark the movement until this happened? It's when the government actually censored content. Those who weren't necessarily involved in politics, when it said that they could not see what they wanted to see, that's when things really got ugly over there for the government. Now, it's a little bit different here. The government isn't ordering this. Big tech is, but you saw the results. Big tech, big government, kind of the same thing in a way. Make sense? All right, folks, there is something I saw last night that I want to highlight. You ever hear of Mike Barnicle? After the speech, and actually it was this morning on Morning Joe, this guy Michael Barnicle has been around for a long time, one of the regulars on Morning Joe, came out and basically said the president is crazy.
Where are the Republicans? Where are the Republican United States senators who perhaps heard of or listened to that 46-minute mentally ill rant last night from the President of the United States? Anyone who listened or heard what Donald Trump said last night and were commissioned by the people of their states to represent the state and the country, who did not think maybe we should go down and take this away from him, invoke the 25th Amendment before more damage is done.
So a couple of things here. I thought the speech was great and might have benefited him if he had given it a little bit earlier. He laid it out perfectly. This guy himself, that's a really bad thing to say. I'm sure he's a nice guy in real life, but when he gets in front of a camera or starts hanging around with his media friends, He's the guy who's got serious problems. A few things about Mike Barnicle. He had to, well, he essentially got fired from the Boston Globe for making stuff up. He wrote about cancer-stricken children that he had never met. Totally made stuff up, so they pushed him out. But somehow he came back, and you see him on Morning Joe all the time, where he's friends with Joe Scarborough. And he hangs out with him in the middle of COVID in Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. See anything? Nobody's wearing a mask. This is a day after Joe lectured however many people watched that show that they should all be wearing masks all the time. And here's something else about Barnicle that I think is kind of interesting. Way back when, he was in a movie essentially playing himself. Now, The Candidate with Robert Redford was made in the early 1970s. It's actually a very good movie. Redford plays this kind of empty suit candidate who's running for all the wrong reasons. And this guy sees right through it, but he's okay with it. Watch.
All a man can say is, here I am. And that's what I say to you tonight. Here I am. I'm willing to give it all I've got. Let's make a beginning.
I saw something out there tonight. Believe me, this is really effective. I can feel it. You can do it. You can go all the way. Look, Ed, you and I both know this is but the point is they're believing it.
Bill, come on. The crowd's waiting. Come on.
Right. Excuse me. It's good to see you, Pete.
You and I both know that this is BS, but they're believing it. Basically playing himself way back in 1972 or whatever. That is Mike Barnicle. The guy you see, well, if you do watch Morning Joe, same guy. Look, this is not over. And the idea that it is over is an illusion. It is an artificial one, and it is a dishonest one. Remember, anything can happen. This is not in the hands of the media. This is in a much higher power's hands.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.